Good evening, Amos Tarfa here. Today is Friday, July 16th. And I just want to share a few things that have been on my heart, some more serious issues and others that are just interesting observations. Once in a while, when I am able, by God's grace, I plan to sit down, push the record button and talk about some, different issues. So this is a perfect time to do this. One interesting fact about me that you might not know, so yes, my training is in chemistry, physics, math, and so on. But one thing you might not know about me is that I actually used to be in the press club when I was in high school. I went to a boarding school, and so we didn't have access to information as far as news updates and so on. And so we would recruit a few students who would handwrite the news headlines that they wanted all the other students to know. So then we would handwrite the news or stories that we wanted to pass on, and then we'll get a few minutes on the assembly ground where everybody was standing, and we would read it to all the students. So I have been a student I've studied a lot in journalism, I guess, is part of what I'm saying. And when it comes to the news, I generally get news updates. I'm working on reducing how much of the updates I get, how much updates I get, but I'm always wanting to know what's going on and trying to figure out trying to make sense of all the details. And I listen to different perspectives to understand where people are coming from. And then, of course, I use a biblical lens to ultimately decide what route and how I address what I hear. So anyways, that's a random fact about me. I used to read the news. And so now I want to basically take a few items. I have a main story for today, and then I'm going to share a little bit about the other ones. This is one of the most important videos of mine that you've ever seen. I would say one of the most important ones, other than the ones where I'm clearly sharing the gospel, of course. But in this video, I want to actually state some concerns I have, very serious concerns about the statement Black Lives Matter. I'm not talking about the organization in this video at all. I'm not referring to an organization. I'm referring to the sentence or the statement, Black Lives Matter. I want to address that and why I personally think that saying Black Lives Matter actually doesn't help Black people for the most part, and it might be actually making things worse for Black people. And I'm going to explain that in a second. This is going to require some focus and, listening to what I have to say. But please keep in mind that I have been debating about making this video for over a year. For over 1 year, I have been thinking about how best can I convey this message so that people can understand where I'm coming from, and that's part of why I'm actually sitting down in this video, because I want to just sit down and have a calm conversation. This would be better if we had, dialogue. If I had people that didn't necessarily agree with what I'm saying, but we could have a dialogue about it. Remember those days people used to have dialogue when they didn't necessarily agree on certain things? Well, it seems like the days have changed, and this is one area that we have to be very careful with. I have a few notes here, so if you don't mind, I'm going to refer to my notes on some of my main points, because what I'm saying, of course, is very, very concerning, especially to someone who might hear it and think, how can you say that? Well, let me give you a few reasons why I'm concerned about that. So I'm going to talk about why the statement Black Lives Matter is actually not something, I personally will not say it, but I also think that you should be very careful if you say it to know why you're saying it, because there is more to the statement than the statement, okay? Human beings have a mental faculty that allows them to critically analyze what they say. Therefore, when they say something, it's not because the thing they're saying is simply true. It has to be embedded in something else. And that's why I'm concerned, because what the statement is saying is not embedded in something else that is actually worth, putting a statement for that for. And I'll explain what I mean in a second. And please don't think I'm trying to belittle anyone's thought process here. I'm just trying to explain to you why I'm concerned. And I'm saying the reason why I said that is about human beings is because that's why you might have gotten some pushback from some people. Maybe you made the statement Black Lives Matter and some of your friends were concerned. Why do you think they were concerned? That's something that you should try and see. What are they thinking about that makes them not agree with the statement that is true and basic? Of course that's true, that Black Lives Matter. But why is it that some people don't want you to say it, for example, right? And this happened in, let me share part of why I'm addressing this topic. And then I have a few more updates. So this video is only about 15 minutes long. I highly encourage you to, pause if you need to, take some notes. And please, if you have concerns, comments, feel free to email them. But please, again, let's be respectful as we have dialogue in the comment section or wherever we have these conversations. Let's stick to the facts Let's look at reality and let's address things that way. Let's be careful not to allow feelings to feed the conversation, but facts and reality should guide the conversation. So why has this been boiling in my heart for a year? I mean, there are days where I wake up and the first thing I'm thinking about is I need to clarify why this statement is dangerous. I need to clarify why I'm concerned. Like some days I'm trying to sleep and I'm thinking about it for 1 year. And finally, I thank God today I'm going to share with you my concern. And I hope that you will give me a chance to explain and that you will listen carefully. And again, if you want to have more dialogue in this, I'd love to have more conversations. This is not the end of this conversation. This is to give you another perspective. So here we go. This is a part of a series that I'm doing called A Comprehensive Discussion on Race and Ethnicities in America. The word comprehensive is very important because in the midst of a lot of discussions that have been happening over the past year, you might hear someone talk about some random story, or this happened to this black guy in this city, or this happened in this issue. Now, they'll be bringing up different aspects of different conversations, but have we had a comprehensive discussion that brings together American history, that brings together some of the writings of slaves, or people who were born during the era of slavery, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass? Can we bring out some of their writings as well? And can we compare notes? And then when we talk about slavery, can we look at world history and look at the role slavery played in world history? And it's sad. Slavery is sad. But can we just look at it in a comprehensive manner? As part of what I'm pleading with people to consider. Let's have a comprehensive conversation. And I hope to do a few of these. So please remember, I love people and I want people to flourish and I want people to thrive. No matter what their background, I want them to thrive. But unfortunately, I feel like there are some conversations that are happening that are not based on truth. And some of that, unfortunately, has actually gotten into the church. And there are pastors now who are supposed to be teaching the people about God's word and truth that have bought into the lies. And this is very concerning. But you know what's interesting is there are two things interesting there. If I could just say this and then we'll go back to my notes on why I believe that saying Black Lives Matter actually doesn't help anything, but makes things worse. So here's number one. The pastors and people who might be teaching falsehood, it's not something that is new. As a matter of fact, in the times of Jesus, Jesus warned that there will be people who claim to be followers of Jesus, followers of him, who will lie to people, who will not be speaking the truth. Okay, so that's number one. So that's why you need to be discerning in who you're listening to. Even if they say they love Jesus with all their hearts, if what they're saying doesn't line up to what Jesus teaches, then we have a problem. The second category of people that this is a concern for, we look at the Apostle Paul in the Bible, and he tells and warns that there will be people who, essentially these people will say that they are followers of Jesus, but they're not really followers of Jesus. You can read Philippians. The book of Philippians talks about this. I highly recommend it. So let's go ahead and see why Amos has been thinking for 1 full year about how to make it clear about this topic of Black Lives Matter as a statement, not an organization here. Some of you have followed the news with the organization and all of that, all the discussions that we can have about the organization. But let's talk about the statement. So we're looking at all angles of the discussion of ethnicities and race using research and interviews. And, I've had a lot of interviews with a lot of my friends who grew up in America, a lot of my friends who grew up in poverty. I said, tell me, I want to hear everything. I want to hear about your story. And I've been doing this for a while. And this is part of what I do. I ask people, tell me your story. How are you doing? How did you get to where you are? And I love just listening and hearing and then encouraging them. And I'll tell you what one of my friends said if we get a chance before the end of the video. So we're going to look at it from different angles. And I'm also going to provide sustainable solutions to the Black community that if there's anyone listening to me now, and I'm going to I have a paper I'm working on called A Letter to a Young Black Boy in Baltimore. The reason why I picked Baltimore, there's several reasons, but one of them, of course, is the education system, and the school system in Baltimore is one of the worst school systems in America, and yet it's one of the most funded school systems in America. That's very interesting. It's very well funded in a sense. A lot of the schools, a lot of money goes into the school system in Baltimore. Unfortunately, we look at the results, and yesterday I saw a news report that over 40% or about 40% of students had less than a 1.0 average GPA. My friends, there is solutions. There are practical solutions. So for simplicity, I'm going to call this student in Baltimore, okay, that I'm writing a letter to. I'm going to call him Ty, just for a second. And this is part, Ty, I've had a young man actually reach out through YouTube and ask for my advice and for some help in his math education journey, which, by God's grace, we're able to help him. But let me just remind you that we're going to talk about places like Baltimore. We're going to talk about places like Detroit. There are solutions that people can take in their lives today without waiting for the government, without waiting for some institution out there, that you can take today and you can begin to flourish more and more than where the place you're living might be, or the school you're at might be. You can flourish above whatever standards they have, and I'll talk about those. So I hope to show again that the statement can be a set of words that actually puts Black lives at a disadvantage instead of helping them. So let's go ahead and start. Social media is, of course, the part of the thing with social media is that, people want to say things in a short amount of time and you want to make it go viral. And sometimes those things are not true, but they travel far and wide. And so part of the whole Black Lives Matter set of words that you've seen are a lot of social media context. You've seen that. Of course, people have gone on to protest and this, that, and the other. I actually think that the protesting that needs to be happening with anything related to Black lives in America right now is a different kind of protest. You'll find it to be very interesting. I think the protest that needs to happen is one of an internal conversation of getting our lives in order more and more. Everybody needs to evaluate their lives. Everybody needs to evaluate their homes. How are we doing? How are we raising children to be responsible and godly? That's where we need to put our efforts. How are we increasing the rate of fathers in the home? How are we increasing the rate of reminding people of the sanctity of life? We need to turn our attention to that. And when we do that, I tell you that a lot of things will be very different in the Black community. So let's start with, again, I give the dangers of social media again, because sometimes social media has some things that are said out loud that are not true, but they're just loud. And no matter how loud you shout something, if it's not true, it's just not true. And so I'm going to refer to my notes for a second, if you don't mind. So here's the thing again. I talked about my story of growing up in Nigeria. That video is on my YouTube channel. It's also on my Facebook wall. If you want, you can learn a little bit about my background. I was born in Nigeria. I came to the United States in 2007, got my degrees. But what is interesting about my story, though, is that part of what God did in my heart in changing me and giving me a new life led me to then want to serve in whatever capacity I could. And so that led me to serve in volunteering in the jails in the city where I was, in being able to teach the men at the jail, in being able to teach people in downtown close to where I live, trying to teach them the truth of God's word. A lot of these people that I taught at this meeting were into drugs and alcohol, and they were seeking to live a life that made sense, and they wanted to learn and get grounded. And that was part of why they came to these teachings. So I've had an opportunity to work with people of all races, essentially. It's irrelevant, or ethnicities, of all ethnicities. Right? I've worked with people from different backgrounds that have been in difficult situations, some who ended up going to prison, and I had to mentor them through that process of learning to live again when they came out of prison. Just different situations. So I've learned a lot about the American criminal justice system, the American education system, and so on and so forth. And so in this video, and I said it was going to be 15 minutes, but I apologize, it might end up being 2 parts. But I'm just trying to lay the groundwork of who I am and how I've been involved in working with people of all backgrounds, and especially people of the Black kids in the neighborhood where I lived, close to where I lived. I used to play basketball, so I used to go there, and I was trying to teach them the importance of education. And so I played basketball with these kids and tried to teach them why they should, for example, in the summertime, why they should spend time reading, why they should spend time investing in what actually matters. So I'll talk a little bit more of my story. If you want more of that story, again, just look at the video. My bachelor's degree was in chemistry. My minor was in philosophy, but I actually studied, of course, we took American history as part of our studies. And then I got my master's in medical physics and another master's, though it's closely related, but another master's in medical health physics. I am getting a PhD in chemistry starting this fall, God willing, and STEM education with the goal of starting schools that will help any student from any background to flourish and become who they were created to be. So that's a little bit of my education journey. education, I believe, is one of the best ways out of poverty, along with a solid parenting base. Having a mother and a father in the home, you cannot underestimate the important role that fathers play. That is just not, you cannot, it's not negotiable. Children need their fathers. They really do. And that is something that is going to come up in this conversation as we move on. So let me give you the thesis. I gave you a little bit of my background. Let me give you the thesis, and then we'll go back and study more of what is going on in this whole conversation. When somebody says Black Lives Matter, okay, when somebody says that Black Lives Matter, my question, one of the first things that goes through my mind is, who said Black lives didn't matter? Because when you say Black Lives Matter, it almost implies that somebody says or said that Black lives didn't matter. So then people say, well, Amos, don't you see what's in the news? Can't you see this, that, and the other? And I'm thinking to myself, again, this conversation is complex. I want to be specific. I'm not addressing in this video some of the rebuttals that I have received about, for example, oh, this person didn't get a job because of his name or his race or ethnicity. I'm not addressing those kinds of concerns. If there is a company that will not hire you because of your name or because of your ethnicity, then I don't think you should even want to work for that company, and that company needs to change its ways. That's a sad thing. If there's a company that will disqualify you simply on the basis of your amount of melanin in your skin, then you should literally not want to be with that company, right? And if there's such a company and the owner is listening to this, I highly encourage you to reconsider how you're running things, because people should not be judged on the color of their skin. That's just a fact. So when those issues come up, we can discuss that later. But let me discuss some of these issues right here, right now. And one of those issues is, well, Amos, you see what's happening here with law enforcement and so on and so forth. And I tell people, here's what you need to, a case you need to bring forth, okay? In every profession, let's just get this out of the way. In every profession, you will have the good, the bad, and the ugly. In every profession. It's unfortunate, but in every profession, you will have some people who do their jobs well, and some people who might abuse authority. That is not a good thing. And we do not support and endorse people who go out and abuse authority. But we should never demonize a whole group of people in any profession because of the bad eggs in that profession. Except if the profession as a whole is all about causing trouble. But that's not what the modern police force or the police force before us today is about. These are people that put on the uniform, and most of them are going out and trying to help people and trying to do their best to keep communities safe. Will there be some that should be fired or who might be troublemakers? Yeah, if you find them, then yeah, address that. But let's never demonize all police officers, because again, these are people that go out and try to make things right in their communities, who are trying to lay down their lives. Let me ask you this question. Think about having a job where you go out every day and you're not sure if you're going to make it back home that night. Think about that kind of job. When I think about that with police officers, this is part of the reason why I already understand. You have a lot going on. Yes, you should be trained well, and we need more funding for training. We want to make sure our police officers are well trained and the right people go into the police force. But here's the thing. When you know that this job comes with all these things that these people have to deal with, sometimes they have to deal with people that are not, or that are unruly, people that are maybe drunk or high on drugs, and the officer is trying to do their best. And so if they pull me over, which I have been pulled over a few times for different situations, one of them, my lights, I didn't turn on my lights, so, they thought maybe my lights were out, and I apologized, and, so when I know where you're coming from, then I need to respectfully listen and answer your questions and, address the issues you pulled me over for and say, have a good day. Thank you for what you do. Because you have to look out for others. It says, the Bible says, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. So I want to address this whole police officer side of things right away. When the police stops any citizen and the citizen complies, if that happens and we then have an epidemic. Now, please note, Just because someone might not comply right away, I'm not talking about somebody who is armed and trying to attack, trying to respond to the police with arms. I'm saying if somebody is just simply unruly or rude, which they shouldn't be. Don't get me wrong, they should not be rude to the officer who has pulled them over for a specific reason that they have grounds for pulling them over for. But when a person is pulled over and so on, and you tell me, Amos, here's the data. All these people, all these hundreds of people were pulled over for no reason, and they were respectful of the police officer, and yet the police officer mishandled them and did things to them that were just wrong and bad. If that is true, now we have an epidemic that we can try and break down and say we have a problem. You have responsible citizens complying with the police force who are being harassed. That's a problem. And then if you tell me, oh, Amos, this is happening to black men all across America. They are responding with respect to the police officer, and they are being treated with disrespect, and it's going terrible, Amos. Look what's happening. If that happens, okay, we can have a conversation. There's a problem. But that's not what's happening. That's not the narrative. Again, I'm not saying just because someone was disrespectful that, for example, their lives should end and so on and so forth. No. And this happens to people of all backgrounds. It's not only black people that have had a terrible experience with a police officer who was having a bad day or just a bad officer, and they themselves, for example, were causing trouble. No. I understand that these things happen. Okay? I get it. But what I'm trying to get at is, if people are respectful and you have a bad officer disrespect them, then that bad officer should be fired or should be let go or should be put on whatever the protocol is for a police department that wants to do well. And my friends and my students who are police officers, a lot of them will agree that yes, they are bad police officers, but we should not judge the whole batch by the bad. I'm sorry it took so long to explain this part of the policing in America, but I think it's very important because that's part of the narrative that is pushed forth, is this idea that somehow police officers and black people have a certain relationship that is not right. No, if you respect authority when you're stopped for a certain reason, most times things go well. And I can tell you that. As I said, I've had experiences with the police over, I think about 5 times, probably at least. And one of them, again, unfortunately, I was rushing to a meeting. I was late. It was my fault. I apologize. I was, sorry about going over the speed limit. And I've learned my lesson to try and stay within the speed limit. But I'm just giving you an example. Yes, I've been pulled over. Yes, I've had encounters. But let's be respectful. Okay, that's that for the police officer side of things. So please calm down as you have this conversation about Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth. We need to listen and try to understand where people are coming from. So as I share this issue again, I want to explain, I'll give you my thesis. I'm sorry I went off on the policing part, because when people say Black Lives Matter, sometimes they tie it to the police issue, but I just feel that that's misguided and actually not true. It's not an epidemic that warrants a statement and a movement, quote unquote, around that. Because again, if there are bad officers, then let that be dealt with. But let's not demonize the whole profession. So when you say Black Lives Matter, it's implying that somebody said Black lives did not matter. I can tell you this, the police force in most of the cities, in almost every city in America, I can say, at this point, I can't tell you any city that I would say it's not the case for, but in almost every city in America, the police force does not think that the lives of black people does not matter. They do not think that. That is not true. So when you hear, oh, Black Lives Matter, and that needs to be addressed because of something that happened between a black person and the police officers, that is not true. That cannot be made as a truth claim in the modern America that we're living in the 2021 America today. That you can make a blanket statement about the police and the black people's interaction. So I don't think the police force is saying that black lives don't matter. I don't think that any institute, I mean, we can look at different institutional issues, the prison, criminal justice system, and so on and so forth. We can look at all those issues. I mean, that's an argument people bring up, that black people get a longer sentence than other people, for example. That's a very common claim. Now, you have to understand, as I said, I've done a lot of work with mentoring people in the prison system, or mentoring people who are in prison, who've come out of prison, and I've also been to the courtroom with some of these people. When the judge looks at their history, one of the people I mentored, and I actually interviewed him here on my channel. You can watch that video on YouTube. But one of the people I mentored, I went to the court case. He had become a Christian. He had left his old ways behind, but he had like 20 pages of crimes. So when he committed another crime, or when there was one other crime, the judge had to look at that list and make a judgment based on what he had on. Look at what you've done. You've done so much. Now, granted, you've been doing well for the past so many years, but look what you just did and look at your crime history. So that discussion about the criminal justice system, we have to be very careful in how we have that discussion, because sometimes we forget that you might bring, oh, look at this white person who committed this crime, and look at this black person who committed the same crime, but why did this person get a longer sentence? Now, that might happen in some cases, some court. Again, I can't speak about every single case. Nobody can do that, because think about it. How many states are there in the United States? How many courts are there in the states, right? So what I'm saying, though, is that sometimes the reason why a black person gets a longer sentence in a particular situation might be because of other crimes they might have committed. Of course, I'm not saying all black people are criminals. They're not. Nobody can say that any one group of people are all criminals. No. In every ethnicity of the world, you will have people who do good and people who do wrong. It's just a reality. And we all need to examine our hearts. We all need to repent if there's areas that we've done wrong and the areas that we've fallen short. But we cannot just take, well, look at this white person, look at this black person, and compare a one-to-one. I get it. And some of you might say, no, let's look at it as a whole. Yes, we can do that. But you know, one thing that actually saddens me when this topic comes up, it's like you're talking about black people and then you bring up criminal justice as though it's sort of a part of the discussion that must be had. No, it doesn't have to be that way. We really have to change the narrative. We have to be very careful when we talk about the criminal justice system. We're talking about black people and then we bring that in as though it's like, oh, you're black, so you just have to, this is sort of a part of the story that you have to have. No, you don't have to have it that way. And so anyways, I know that I'm not going to go into detail on that right now, but the point I'm trying to make is, this is the main point I'm making of what I just said about the criminal justice system. Please be careful when you're talking about, and when we're talking about black people and sort of the expectations that should be had on them and how they should live. Let's be very careful with that. So when people say that Black Lives Matter, generally they're saying it because somebody somewhere said Black lives don't matter. Well, here's the problem, my friends. When I look at a few scenarios, I'm going to look at a few scenarios with you for a second. But when I look at a few scenarios, such as the black on black crime in inner cities, which, yes, I understand that some of these inner city situations are such that poverty is higher. And we can talk about the reasons why poverty is higher and so on and so forth, why the unemployment is higher. And we need to work to get things in order. Of course, I agree, 100%. But when you have black on black crime, when you have a very high abortion rate amongst black women, when you have a high fatherlessness rate amongst the black community, in the black community, and please keep this in mind. I know I mentioned abortion here, and I want to say this, that we have to acknowledge when something is wrong, we have to acknowledge that it's wrong, and then we need to seek to make things right. A baby is a baby. Whether the baby is in the mother's womb or outside the mother's womb, a baby is a baby. There's a discussion that I can get into right now that will show you the dangers of saying that a baby inside a mother's womb is not a baby. That's a very dangerous thing to say, because now you're saying that you're defining humanity by a person's idea of what they think humanity is and not what humanity ultimately is. What do I mean by this? So you look at a pregnant woman and one person says, oh, you are having a baby. The other one says, well, no, that's not a baby, right? Imagine if you had that conversation. Well, who is right? Is the baby a baby? Is that a human being or not? That's a good question. You should really look at if you think that abortion is okay, right? That it should be okay. Now, that's part of what's affecting the African American community. If you look at the statistics, there's a higher rate. And of course, you can connect poverty to the issue of abortion. But abortion, just like any other sin, can be brought to the cross of Jesus Christ, and people can receive forgiveness and repent if they've had an abortion. Abortion, just like any other sin, can be brought to the cross of Jesus Christ. And he brings forgiveness to our sins. So instead of justifying the sins, let's bring it to the cross of Jesus Christ. And he can bring forgiveness. No matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, Jesus says, come and surrender and give your lives to Jesus Christ, and he can work in and through you. So I'm not going to go into more detail right now. This is a very important topic. But the point I'm trying to make is when we look at some of the scenarios of where Black lives, right? So we talk about the issues of fatherlessness. We talk about the issues of Black on Black crime. We talk about the issues of abortion. We talk about the issues of how Black people are treated in Africa, for example. Then it makes me wonder, the places where I seem to see or hear people say, so the places where Black lives don't seem to matter a lot of the time are in Black communities. And in many cases, it's Black people that need to be having a conversation. We need to be having a conversation, right? If you could say people with more melanin, if you don't like the word Black, if you know what I mean. Like people, or Black people, just for simplicity, they need to be having a conversation about, excuse me, how can we love one another? How can we see this rate of, oh boy, just today on the news, just today, do you know how many children have been killed? Like Black children killed in Black communities, and we don't hear people shouting that their life matters? Do you know how many innocent young people have been killed in the streets in 1 year? And you're going to pick out an incident of a white police officer with a Black person, and you're going to use that as the only basis for having a conversation of Black Lives Matter? And please, I'm not mad at anybody. This is very dear to my heart, as I said. It's been a year of debating how best to have this conversation. My friends, the conversation of Black Lives Matter needs to go back into Black homes, and conversations need to happen in Black homes about how can we love one another? How can we see more Black people flourishing? And there are solutions, and that's part of what I'm going to transition into. But my point is, where are the protests when the young children are killed? Where are the protests when the innocent bystanders are killed? Where are the protests? Where are the protests for the lives of the innocent and the unborn? Where are the protests? Don't we care about all Black lives? So when you say Black Lives Matter, especially when you put it on the basis of policing in America, or you put it on the basis of systemic racism, which is a very vague thing, like today, there is nothing, I repeat, nothing. If you're a Black person in America, there is nothing you cannot do if you set your heart to do it. You might have to leave the city that you're living in, but you know what? That in and of itself is a blessing. You might have to pack your bags and move out of your city because they don't appreciate you, but that's just the reality of humanity. It's unfortunate, but not everybody would appreciate everybody in every community. That's just the reality. And sometimes, when I travel to the South, I've been to over 20 states of the United States. I've been to most of the states in the United States, right? Except Wyoming and Idaho. I just don't know people there, right? If you're there and you're my friend, maybe you should invite me and I should visit. But every state I've been to, I've been treated with respect. I've been treated with dignity. Every single state I've been to in America, all across the country. And here's what's interesting. Some of the times that I was actually not treated with respect, and I'm not saying this to bash, any particular ethnicity, but my point is, some of the times where I wasn't treated with respect was not from a non-Black person. It wasn't from a white person. No, and I get it. There are some people of different ethnicities, including Black people, who say things disrespectfully to other people. Guys, this cannot be detached from the issue of sin. There is a problem. Humanity has a problem. That's why in every profession, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because the human beings have a heart that needs to be transformed. And if it's not transformed, it can get into tendencies of saying things that are harsh, of not treating people with love and respect. And I'm sorry this video has gotten so long, but I just feel like I have to establish what I'm trying to say here gradually. But some of the places I went to when I traveled around the country, I went to a hotel and this Black lady, I respect people. Again, an individual, this particular individual, she treated me in such a way that I was concerned. Why am I being treated like this? And please, this is not trying to bash anybody, right? Any black, I'm not bashing all people. I'm saying this particular individual treated me in such a way that I almost felt like I was a troublemaker. And yes, I've also had people of other ethnicities that maybe haven't treated me with respect. But that one, I remember clearly. This just happened recently. But generally speaking, for most of my time in America, I've been here for 14 years, it's not been an issue. Now, again, there are people that are disrespectful of other minorities or disrespectful of other people, disrespectful of white people. This happens, my friends. It's really unfortunate. We all need to be mindful of the words that we use to one another. We need to be careful in the words that we use in addressing one another. We have to be respectful and loving and kind in treating one another. So when I hear Black Lives Matter, I think it's misguided because the place that the conversation needs to be happening is in the homes. We went from a 25%. Let me say this, because some people say, well, Martin Luther King Jr. fought for this, that, and the other. What Martin Luther King Jr. fought for, some of the things he fought for, the right to vote and desegregation of different institutions in America, these are things that needed to happen. And there needed to be a reason, like this needed to happen long ago. But here's what's interesting. The battle today, when we went from a 25%, 25% homes with single parents in the black community to over 70% today. That battle that needs to happen needs to be, hey, young man, come here. We need to teach young men, come here. Want to teach you what it means to be a father. So let's talk about some solutions. I don't know if I made my point concise. The reason why Black Lives Matter as a statement is not helpful is because it focuses its efforts in a place that is a waste of time in dealing with black people as a whole. Because if you're dealing with black people as a whole, the problem that is affecting black people as a whole in America is not that you have respectful citizens minding their business and then they're getting in trouble with the police just for being black. That's not happening in America. So if that's not the case, then what is the problem? Number one, again, fatherlessness. So then why don't we deal with fatherlessness? So saying Black Lives Matter doesn't help deal with fatherlessness. Instead, maybe go out and mentor a young black boy. If you have a young man or a man who wants to help, go mentor a young black boy. Or you have a lady who wants to help the girls, go mentor a young black girl. So what needs to happen is we need to see mentoring happen. We need to see we need to see more mentoring. So you have young black boys being mentored and taught what it means to be responsible young boys. So here are a few solutions before we end this segment of a comprehensive analysis of the issue of race and ethnicities in America. Number one, we need to encourage young black boys to make sure they complete their high school education at least. Finish it as best as you can. If you feel like your school system is just not helping, then maybe get a GED. If you feel like there's just no way you're able to get through the school system, get a GED. Do whatever you can to have a diploma. That's number one. Number two, of course, try and find a job or go to college if you can. And this is a new era. Almost anybody in America can go to college. Now, you might not be able to get your 4-year education for free, but you can take a little bit of classes at a time. Even if you have to take one class at a time. If you feel that college is for you, then do that. But if you don't think college is for you, then find somebody who you can shadow, find somebody who can mentor you, and get a job in the trades. But you have to have a job. That's something you have to do. Do whatever you can to get a job. Number one, try and finish high school and then possibly go to college if it's for you, if you feel that's what you're called to do. Number two, get a job. If you go to college, make sure you study something that makes sense. Not everything that is an option in college is worth studying. I repeat, not every major in college is worth studying. Some of it you can study on your own in your own free time. So finish high school, get a job. Do not have a child before you're married. If you've already had a child and you're not married, I'm not condemning you or bashing you. There is hope. It's not the end of the story. But what we need to talk about is, what is the long-term solution? Part of that long-term solution is, as of today, July 16th, moving forward, let's see the fatherlessness issue addressed. Let's see more children with their fathers and their mothers. Let's see more couples married and settled down having children. That's the route you want to follow. No matter what else you've ever known, that's the route you want to follow. And in the African American community, again, the statistics are out there. There is a high rate of fatherlessness. So let's address that issue. Finish high school, finish college, I would say preferably. Go into the STEM fields if you can, or go into a field that is practical and that you don't even, hopefully don't have to get student loans for, that you can get, finish that degree and have it paid for. Get a job. So finish finish high school, get a job, get married before the conversation of children comes up. Be careful who you spend time with. Be careful so not just who you spend time with, but where you're at, right? Because sometimes the things that happen that we see on the news, a lot of some of these stories, people were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So why don't we reconsider how that is addressed? Let us be in the right place at the right time. There's nothing good that comes out of being at a place at 1 a.m., except you're going to work or coming from work. There's almost nothing good that happens at 1 a.m. There's just nothing good generally that comes out of that with people out and about in the streets. So be mindful of where you're at. And Psalm 1 in the Bible speaks about this clearly. And we can address that in our segment. Maybe I'll wrap that up with that. So those are some of the issues. Now, in this segment or this series, I will talk about slavery. I will talk about, this discussion around critical race theory, which is a theory that came out of law schools. It's a legal thing, right? A law school legal framework discussion. Vodi Bakum, in his book Fault Lines, does an excellent job of discussing this issue. He discusses critical race theory, and I highly recommend that you read that and study the history of critical race theory itself. Let's look at where it came from and understand what its intents are. Okay, so that's a book, again, Fault Lines, Vodi Bakum. As you can see, I've taught American history, I've taught world history. I enjoy reading and learning history and different facets of history. Okay. So I've been working with different groups. I've written a math curriculum, some of you know. I've written a math program, some of you know this. And part of my goal is to see that in every inner city school, I want any kid that wants to flourish academically to get a handle on that project, right? It's called toolsformath.org. They could go, they can learn math, they can let me know if they have questions. And this invitation is open to any kid in America, by the way, not just African-American kids. Any kid in America who feels that they're stuck and they can't get far in America, send us an email. Let's have a conversation and we will show you what it takes and how you can flourish and how you can overcome no matter what obstacle you have. You can flourish in this America. Now, are there issues and areas of society that needs to be addressed? I've said this before, and yes, I'll say it again. Yes, we need to do work on our criminal justice system in reviewing some of how it operates. Yes, we need to review how we're doing in our healthcare, but we can't abandon and break the whole thing down. What are you going to replace it with? What solutions do you have? That's something that is critical. So please know that part of my goal in life is starting schools to raise up leaders who will go out and keep making things better and better for everybody. Having opportunities for everybody to flourish. Yes, that's part of what needs to happen. But ultimately, it needs to happen when they flourish with having their hearts transformed by knowing Jesus Christ and living for him. That is ultimately one of the most fundamental things that needs to happen, is that we need to know Jesus. So everyone has a story. We should stop telling people that because of their skin color, they cannot talk into a situation. Everybody has a story. Let's listen to one another. Let's love one another. Let's provide opportunities for everybody to flourish. And education is one of the best ways we can do that, my friends. We will talk about slavery in another episode. My hope is to show people who want to walk in the truth how to handle some of what is happening around this topic. I understand some people don't want to look at this topic logically, but it is important to watch how much our feelings can affect what we end up believing. Let truth be our guide. Martin Luther King had a battle that he fought, and a lot of things that he went through and he did back then. Today, there are battles that need to be fought, but some of those battles need to be happening in homes, not on the street, but in homes. It is so sad where people get so divided about, Black Lives Matter as a statement, when the people that sometimes don't support the statement are actually doing more to help black people than the ones who are putting the statement on their Twitter. I told my coworkers about this one time, and he made a very interesting and profound remark. He said it's much easier to just put a tweet or something on Facebook. Then you feel like you've done your duty. Oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. Let me sit back and watch my TV show. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. I just put my tweet. I'm good, right? You guys can pass over my house. I put a sign on my door. Black Lives Matter. What does that even mean? What is that doing for anybody? What we need to remember is Jesus said, whatever you did to the least of these, he wasn't talking about any one ethnicity. Whoever God has brought into your life, whatever group God has brought into your life, how are you helping them to flourish? It doesn't matter what ethnicity they're from. It might be an Asian American. Am I reaching out and loving them and caring for them? There was a season here a few months ago where there was an increase in attacks on Asian Americans. That's terrible. This was happening in our country for no reason at all. And are you telling me that I should forget about the pain that my Asian American brothers are feeling and keep up with the chant as though I have this new cult and religion to follow? There's an English professor at Columbia. If you remember his name, let me know. Otherwise, I'll find his link and put it there. But he actually said that some of the social justice discussions of today, it's a religion, literally a religion. There's an atheist by the name of James Lindsay. He's not a Christian, an atheist. And he would say the same thing. So it's not even just because I'm a Christian that I have a concern with the phrase Black Lives Matter. Even non-Christians are saying there's a problem here. There's a problem. Look at now I get it. Some of the protests are separate from the looting. I get it. But my point though is that there were people some of their businesses were destroyed because they would not put a pledge or say Black Lives Matter. Really? And again, I'm not saying that if you've said that statement that you support the looting and destruction. My point though is, are you noticing something going on here? I wouldn't want to stand close to a sentence or statement that is demonizing a person because they don't say the statement. Because of course Black Lives Matter. The question though is who said they don't matter? Can we address the issues? The black on black crime? Can we address the children being killed in the streets? Can we address those lives because they matter? And by the way, speaking of Black Lives Matter, are we talking of all black lives? Number one. Number two, what makes any life matter, by the way? You need to answer that question. Why does any life matter? And we say, as Christians will say, because they're made in the image of God. And the same Bible that teaches that people are made in the image of God says love your neighbor, says that we should love people, period. It even says to love your enemies, by the way. So, by the way, it's interesting the Bible says that, and it's interesting in that the Bible is not telling us that we should be focused on people's ethnicity. It actually says no, that should not be the focus. We will talk about slavery. We will talk about what has happened. Don't get me wrong, we will. But in this video, I just wanted to tell any black boy, black girl, or anyone in America who thinks that they're being held back by any system to rise up. The tools are out there. If you don't know where they are, please send an email. We will send you the tools. You can flourish. You can change the narrative in your family. You can open the door for other people. This is possible in America, my friends. This is possible. And so, no country is perfect. I joke that Switzerland is close to perfect because they have a lot of chocolate being made there, but that's a joke. Of course, Switzerland is not perfect either. But no country is perfect. We should all be doing our best to get things and make them better, but we should not be doing it out of a heart of anger. We should be doing it out of a heart of gratitude. Sometimes one of the things I want to tell people that protest is they should go to another country. Just go to Africa. Go to some parts of Africa, like some parts of Nigeria. Just go live there for a month. And then come back and tell me if you're going to keep protesting the same way you're protesting. America is not perfect, but America has so many things that are right. That's why many people are risking their lives to come to America. So let's make things better. Let's distance ourselves from any narrative that is not based on truth. And let's put our minds focused on who God has called us to be. Because in Psalm 1 in the Bible, It says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. My friends, we're supposed to delight in the law of the Lord. So it's not just that I don't necessarily support certain things that are not based on truth. I shouldn't be found near them. That's why pastors that have taught some of the false narratives need to move away from that. Flee from this narrative that is just not true. Nobody's out to hunt black people in the law enforcement agency. Let's do our part. Nobody's perfect. I get it. Let's do our part. Let's be respectful of authority. And if the authority is disrespectful, there are systems in place that will take care of that. But let's do our best. Let's stand with truth. Let's not allow feelings to dictate the narrative. So, my friends, that's a lot to chew on. I hope to go through more of the books I'm reading on American history. And please consider subscribing, like this video, share this video. I understand that not everybody would agree with everything I've said, but I just hope that they'll give me a chance, as I've spent a year thinking about this. And I hope you would give it a chance to process what I've shared. Of course, Black Lives Matter. But the statement and the whole idea is not something that I think is worth following, because it doesn't get to the root of fatherlessness, which needs to be addressed. It doesn't get to the root of all the other issues that are affecting African Americans. And we need righteousness. So that's why I brought up the abortion issue. We need to fight for the right for children, born and unborn, to have a chance to live and to flourish. That's my goal in life, to give everybody a chance to flourish. Thank you for your time. I hope to give more videos on solutions. I hope to give more videos on tools to help people in the inner city schools that feel like their schools are failing. That will come in another video. Take care and have a blessed day.